You are no ordinary man. The moment you were born, your fate was sealed. This world tried to silence you, to suppress you, to make you look ordinary. But your birth was not ordinary. You didn't come as an ordinary soul. You are a chosen one. From the very beginning, you carried a fire inside you. You felt it, didn't you? Even as a child, you were aware of it. People around you either loved you or feared you, because their eyes saw the light in you. They knew what you were, but you didn't. Now it's time to wake up. It's time to get rid of the lies told to you, the chains put on you, the voices that try to minimize you. Write 77 in the comments immediately, because your journey is just beginning, and this world has to witness your ascension. They stood unwavering, convinced that their grip on fate was unbreakable, that they could shape reality through sheer force of will. Relentlessly, they stormed forward, convinced they could dismantle what was beyond their understanding. Again and again they lunged, pouring all their energy into a battle they had already lost. They calculated, they schemed, certain of their impending triumph. But each move they made was a stone stacked upon the weight pressing down on them. They watched, blind to their own undoing, as their efforts transformed into the very thing that would consume them. Warnings surrounded them, yet they scoffed. An exit stood before them, yet they refused to step through. And now, the tide has surged back with unrelenting force. Their downfall was not crafted by another's hand, but was sculpted by their own persistence. Everything they built was nothing more than a tower of sand, eroded by the very storm they summoned. The final piece has fallen. The game is done. Their actions echoed outward, but instead of fading, the ripples returned. Stronger, sharper, unrelenting. They reached for control, weaving unseen forces into their grip, yet every attempt turned to dust in their hands. What should have bound, unraveled. What should have diminished, strengthened. They could not fathom it. Doors slammed shut, only to burst open again. Barriers they erected crumbled as if they had never existed. Frustration turned to obsession, determination to desperation. They convinced themselves that more pressure, more effort, more force would shift the outcome in their favor. So, they poured in everything they had, unaware they were only fueling the very power they sought to crush. Every calculated strike only served to reinforce what stood against them. Every intricate trap became an opening, leading to something far beyond their reach. They thought they were the architects of another's fall, yet it was their own foundation crumbling beneath them. A chorus of warnings surrounded them, each note growing sharper, each echo pressing closer. Yet, their path remained unchanged. Whispers of unease snaked through their minds, a tightening sensation in their chests, but they ignored it. Patterns appeared, threading through their days, through their nights, yet they refused to acknowledge the message hidden within. People distanced themselves without explanation. Opportunities dimmed before they could grasp them, yet still they pushed forward. The universe, patient yet firm, continued to place signs before them, yet they stepped over each one. It was not force that bound them to their fate, not manipulation or coercion, only their own choices, their own pride. They walked deeper into the unknown, believing themselves invincible, believing they could move without consequence. But every ignored sign was another chain tightening around them. Every disregarded warning, another key turned in the lock behind them. The door had shut, and they had sealed it themselves. If you feel the abundance of divine love in your heart, now is the time to share it. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. This divine gift will touch not only your life, but the souls of many through this platform. Each of you has a sacred place in God's grand design, and your generosity will be the fruit of our prayers. Act now. Share your blessings to glorify His kingdom, for you were created to do even greater things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. The weight of their choices is now an anchor they cannot shake. Their breath comes quicker, shallower, as reality constricts around them. Their own actions trail behind them like a shadow they cannot outrun, creeping ever closer, tightening its grip. There is no negotiation, no way to turn back time, no unseen force to bargain with. The mirror reflects not just their image, but the consequences of every decision they dismissed. Their hands built the reality they now stand in. Their own words laid the foundation of the ruin surrounding them. Panic is no longer a fleeting sensation. It is an ever-present weight pressing against their chest. There is no refuge, no escape, only the slow, unrelenting realization that the door they once walked through no longer opens. This was never a battle waged against them. It was a reckoning they crafted with their own hands. The verdict has been delivered, final and absolute. Every thread of control they clung to has frayed beyond repair. The illusion of power has faded, leaving only the consequences they once laughed at. The energies they toyed with have circled back, not with vengeance, but with unwavering precision. Their strength diminishes, slipping away like water through cracked hands. Sleep brings no rest. The nights stretch long and restless, and their bodies bear the weight of what they once ignored. No remedy, no medicine, no explanation satisfies the growing hollowness within them. The mirror shows a face they barely recognize, tired eyes, sallow skin, a presence lingering just beyond perception. They wander through days that stretch endlessly, minutes dragging like weights around their ankles. The very air feels thicker, the world off-kilter. Everything they once took for granted, vitality, ease, confidence, now feels like a distant memory, and there is no way back. The ground beneath them shifts, unsteady, unpredictable. Where once stability stood firm, there is now only uncertainty. Their once assured resources slip through their fingers, a well running dry, no matter how desperately they reach. Stability has turned to sand, slipping away with every desperate attempt to grasp it. Their fortune crumbles in their hands. Doors they once walked through without hesitation now remain firmly shut. Once unshakable foundations give way, swallowed by an emptiness they cannot control. Their names, once spoken with respect, now carry only silence. Their reach, once vast, shrinks until there is nothing left but isolation. Familiar voices grow distant, bonds dissolve, and the spaces they once filled grow colder. The world turns without them. And in the quiet, only their own choices remain, echoing back at them in the silence. Everything they dismissed as fiction has now become their reality, closing in on them like an unseen force pressing against their chest. Everywhere they turn, the reminders are inescapable. Words spoken by strangers carry an eerie familiarity. Objects in their path seem deliberately placed. A sense of being watched lingers in the stillness. It isn't chance. It isn't misfortune. The very currents they once sought to manipulate have shifted against them, surging back with the weight of their own intentions. They attempt to shake it off, to dismiss it as coincidence, but deep down, the truth grips them like an iron chain. There is no more room for denial. What was once a game to them is now a binding force that will not relent. The scales have tipped, and every thread they wove in secrecy has come unraveled in plain sight. Their nights are no longer a place of rest, but a threshold where the past and present collide. They twist and turn, trapped in an endless loop of fragmented visions, faces from distant memories, whispering words they can no longer ignore, echoes of choices they thought were buried, clawing their way to the surface. Their body jolts awake, breathless, heart hammering against their ribs, but the waking world offers no reprieve. The weight remains, thick and suffocating, lingering like a storm cloud above them. They reach for distractions, but silence follows them into every room. Music offers no solace. Conversations fail to break the spell. No matter how much they try to drown it out, the presence of what they have done clings to them. There is no escaping it now. The forces they toyed with have returned, unmoved by their fear, unshaken by their regret. What was cast out has circled back, and the reckoning is already unfolding. The realization did not come in whispers or gentle signs. It struck like an unforgiving blow, sudden and absolute. In an instant, the illusion shattered, leaving them raw and exposed. Their lungs tightened. The world around them took on an oppressive stillness, and their heart pounded in recognition of what they had spent so long avoiding. No longer could they convince themselves they held the upper hand. No longer could they pretend that the tides hadn't shifted. Every attempt to look away was met with glaring reminders. A stray phrase that sent a shiver down their spine, a familiar name that surfaced when they least expected, an eerie sense of déjà vu that gnawed at their mind. They had spent so much time believing they were ahead, only to realize they had been running in circles, chasing shadows, mistaking their own destruction for control. The mirror no longer shows a simple reflection. It reveals the weight of every step they took down this path. The air feels heavier, their surroundings feel distorted, and the ground beneath them no longer holds firm. They try to go about their days as if nothing has changed, but each movement feels sluggish, as if unseen hands pull them back. They catch their own gaze and feel like a stranger is staring back, eyes dull, presence diminished, a hollow shell of the confidence they once wore. They begin to avoid their own reflection, to step away from the spaces that once felt familiar, yet the sensation follows them. There is no cleansing away what has been set in motion, no ritual to erase the threads they wove into fate. The truth is undeniable now. What they sent out has not been forgotten, nor has it been forgiven. One by one, the pillars that held their world together collapse. Stability, once taken for granted, now slips through their grasp. Opportunities dwindle before they can reach them. Relationships unravel without warning, and the foundation beneath their feet crumbles with every desperate attempt to hold it together. The more they resist, the faster the unraveling spreads. They see the stark contrast before them. You, untouched, moving forward, thriving in ways they once swore would never happen. The sight of your ascension is unbearable, a living testament to the lie they built for themselves. Each success you claim is another reminder of the war they thought they had won. It turns their stomach, not because of what you've done, but because they know, deep within, the power they once believed they held never truly existed. They played a dangerous game, one they thought would always tip in their favor. Yet now, they are the ones engulfed by the very forces they sought to control. The nights stretch longer. Their mind is a battlefield of relentless whispers and ceaseless dread. In every quiet moment, shadows flicker at the edge of their vision, an ever-present reminder that their choices have solidified into an irreversible fate. They reach for control, but their hands grasp nothing. They search for an exit, but the doors they once commanded have closed behind them. This is not a punishment delivered by another. It is the inevitable weight of their own making, pressing down on them with an unforgiving finality. They built the structure of their own downfall with steady hands, believing themselves architects of another's demise. But the walls they raised have sealed them in. The very strings they pulled now bind them, unyielding, unbreakable. They struggle against it, convinced they can still twist the threads in their favor, but the weight only grows heavier. What was once pliable is now fixed in place. There is no reversing the current. They set the course, and now they must walk it. The forces they once commanded no longer heed their voice. They have become prisoners of their own will. And in the silence, where once there was arrogance and certainty, there is now only the heavy, inescapable truth. This was never power. It was only the illusion of control. The path they chose was never a path to power, but a descent into their own undoing. The very forces they believed would serve them have now become their prison, weaving around them like unseen chains, tightening with every breath. The words they once whispered in secrecy now echo relentlessly in their minds, voices that refuse to be silenced. Sleep evades them. The air grows thick with something unseen, and every shadow stretches farther than it should. Their own reflection has become a stranger, drained, hollow, consumed by what they once sought to control. The walls close in, the weight grows unbearable, and the realization dawns too late. They were never the masters, only the pawns in a game they did not understand. What they called forth now lingers, feeding on their very essence, draining them in ways they never anticipated. Rest is a luxury denied to them. Nights filled with whispers that have no source, footsteps that sound in empty rooms, a cold that no fire can chase away. They try everything, rituals meant to cleanse, words meant to undo, but nothing stops the creeping dread, the ever-growing sense that they are being watched by something beyond their understanding. No one believes them. They call it exhaustion, coincidence, bad fortune, but deep inside, they know the truth. The weight pressing on them is not misfortune, it is consequence. What they unleashed refuses to be dismissed, and the debt it demands will not be waived. What they intended for another has wrapped itself around them, pulling tighter with every desperate attempt to escape. They ignited a spark, believing it would burn only in their favor. Yet now, they stand in the center of an inferno they cannot control. Everything they built, everything they relied on, crumbles around them. The certainty they once carried has shattered. Every step forward leads only to dead ends. Every attempt to break free binds them further. They thought they dictated the game, but the rules were never in their favor. Now, they stand at the mercy of the forces they once wielded recklessly, no longer the orchestrators, but the ones ensnared. There are no second chances, no negotiations. The weight of their choices is upon them, and there is no one left to save them from the consequences they refuse to see. Their false sense of control has disintegrated. Every attempt to bend reality in their favor has backfired. They moved with certainty, speaking as if they held dominion over all things, but now those who once listened turn away. Their presence no longer commands respect. It inspires discomfort, unease. Their reach has withered. Their name no longer carries the power they once wielded. They hear your name and flinch, see your success, and feel the weight of their failure pressing on their chest. The very idea of you unsettles them, not because of what you've done, but because you exist beyond their reach. You are the reminder they cannot escape, the proof that they never had the power they thought they did. Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace be upon you today. I am here to remind you of a profound truth. Our existence is grounded in God's divine plan, unshaken by the temporal concerns of the world. As the Bible says, whatever is done in faith will return to God in abundant blessing. Luke 6:38. Like that great oak tree, our roots are deeply rooted in God's universal truth. Every step we take, every stand we take, is secured by His strength. And now, you are being offered the opportunity to be part of that blessing. When you use the Super Thank You button and donate $100, this movement will return to you 100-fold in abundance. Regret gnaws at them, but it cannot undo what has already taken root. They poured so much energy into stopping you, never realizing that their efforts were wasted before they even began. They watch as you rise, as your path expands before you, untouched by their schemes. And they who once believed themselves untouchable now shrink away, avoiding your gaze, your presence, your very existence. They weave through crowds to escape unseen, dread creeping in when they hear whispers of your name. There is no hiding from the truth. They lost, and not just to you, but to themselves. Every mask they once wore has cracked, revealing the weight of everything they tried to deny. Like a ship that set sail under false stars, thinking it was charting a course toward power, they now find themselves drifting aimlessly, lost in waters they no longer understand. The wind they once commanded has turned against them, pushing them further from the shore, further from control. No matter how they struggle to adjust the sails, no matter how they plead with the sky, the course is set. They were warned. The currents whispered, the sky dimmed, but they believed they were above the storm. Now, they can feel it pressing in from all sides, a force they can no longer ignore. Once, they carried themselves with certainty, moving with the ease of those who believe they hold dominion over all things. They spoke as if the world answered to them, as if destiny itself bent beneath their will. But something has changed. The air around them no longer welcomes them as it once did. The weight of their own steps feels different now, uncertain, hesitant. Their own name, once a source of power, now feels empty when they speak it. The balance has shifted, and confidence has turned to caution, then to paranoia. The same presence they used to scoff at, the same force they dismissed as powerless, now looms over them like a storm they cannot outrun. Every time they hear your name, their stomach twists. Every time they see your face, their pulse quickens. They don't understand why, but deep down, something in them does. It is the knowledge they refuse to admit, the quiet, creeping understanding that they were wrong, that what they touched, what they played with, has consequences they cannot escape. They long to rewind time, to go back to when they thought they had control. But the past is written, the ink has dried, and there is no erasing what has been set in motion. They thought they were the architects of fate, that they held the pen that would decide how this story ended. But they failed to understand one thing. There are laws that cannot be broken, spiritual truths that do not bend to pride. They mistook patience for weakness, grace for permission. But now they see it for what it was, a chance they did not take, a door they chose to walk past. Everything they dismissed as foolishness now stands before them as undeniable truth. The very forces they mocked have risen against them, and no amount of denial can change that. They sense it in the air, in the stillness of a room that once felt safe. They hear it in the conversations that seem too precise, in the moments that feel too aligned to be mere coincidence. They try to ignore it, to dismiss it as paranoia, but the weight of what they've done follows them like a shadow that never leaves. They used to command rooms, speak with authority, walk with heads high, believing they dictated the course of their own path. Now, their steps are careful, their words measured. Their confidence has drained from them like water slipping through cracked hands. Every attempt to reclaim their former ease only reminds them how much they have lost. And it is not just the world around them that has changed. It is them. Their reflection no longer carries the same light. Their once bright eyes have dulled, their spirit weighed down by something they cannot shake. They avoid mirrors, avoid quiet spaces, because in the silence, the truth is loudest. This is not simply regret. It is something deeper. It is the knowing that they stood at a crossroads and chose the wrong path. That they could have stopped, could have turned back, but pride kept them moving forward until there was no ground left beneath them. Now, they are caught in the very storm they created, swept up by the winds they once called upon. But the storm does not listen to them anymore. It does not answer to their voice, does not heed their pleas. It moves on its own, with its own purpose, and they are simply along for the ride. They wonder now, if they had seen it sooner, would they have stopped? If they had known that every step they took only led them deeper into this, would they have turned back? But it doesn't matter now. The past is behind them, and the road they paved is the road they must walk. There is no turning back. They wanted dominion. They wanted to be feared. But now, the only thing left to fear is themselves, their choices, their actions, the fate they can no longer outrun, and the worst part, the thing that haunts them more than anything else. You never had to lift a finger. You never chased them, never sought revenge, never needed to strike back. You simply kept rising. You simply kept moving forward. And that, more than anything, is what they cannot stand. Because they did everything in their power to stop you. And yet here you are, thriving, rising higher than they ever imagined. The more they fall, the higher you soar. And there is nothing they can do to change that. This is the story they wrote. These are the pages they filled. And the final chapter, they must read it to the end, whether they want to or not. Now is the time to share God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube. You can contribute to His plan and be a part of this divine mission with a donation of $100 or more. Every gift reflects God's generosity, and I believe it will return to you exponentially, far beyond your expectations. Remember, His protection and blessing is on your every step and every donation. You become part of His divine plan. You are a strong, radiant being, unshakable as His mighty rock. Witness God's miracles, feel the fruits of your generosity in your soul, and illuminate the world with confidence and courage. Be blessed and let the light of the Lord guide your path. Their fall was not a sudden collapse, but a slow, painful disintegration. Piece by piece, everything they relied on has slipped away, leaving them with nothing but their own regrets. Those who once surrounded them have faded into the distance. The influence they clung to has eroded beyond recognition, and all the while, you rise, you flourish, you move forward without hesitation, untouched by the destruction they tried to bring upon you. That is what torments them most. Not that they failed to stop you, but that you never needed to look back. That their presence, their schemes, their very existence is now irrelevant to you. They watch as you move forward, and all they can do is remain frozen in the wreckage they created. The barriers they tried to place before you have vanished. The limits they imposed no longer hold weight. You continue forward, unburdened, untouched by their past efforts. And they remain behind, struggling against the very forces they unleashed, reaching for a future that will never come. They are caught in the aftermath of their own doing, trapped in a cycle of their own creation. While you expand, they shrink. While you build, they break. While you embrace the light ahead, they remain lost in the shadows they created. And there is no escape, no rewriting the past, no redemption waiting for them. The choices have been made, the results set in motion. Their story has reached its final pages. Yours, however, has only just begun.